Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sandee.
Thank you. Two things I believe. The first is that from the neck down, we're all minimum wage. And the second is that we're all connected. My name is Sandee Kastrul, and I'm the president and co-founder of IC Stars. And I'd like to take you for a moment back before I founded the organization, and I was a school teacher. I taught math and science. And I had the wonderful opportunity to also train teachers across the Midwest. And what I saw was that kids who were living in rural, suburban, and urban communities, the kids who had the one thing in common, and that was that they had overcome adversity, had developed the most resiliency. And as a result, that resiliency toolkit included critical thinking skills, creativity, reciprocity, chutzpah, and that what was missing was an opportunity to deploy those skills, those gifts, in the business community. So, if I could take you back to my chemistry class, on the very first day, I would pull down the periodic table and have all of my students pick their element. And that's who they'd be for the whole semester. So if you were iron, I'd call you Effie. If you were gold, I'd say, hey, you. Thank you for laughing. The next thing I'd say is, okay, do you want to be a solid, a liquid, or a gas? Now, the cool guys would be like, solid. And some of the girls would say liquid. But the geeks, who were thinking, where's she going with this, would say gas. Now, imagine you're 17 years old, you're in a room full of your colleagues, you say gas, and you're going to hear some sounds. You know what I mean? Well, immediately, I'd separate the classroom. I'd say, all the solids, you guys sit in the front row, your molecules are packed tightly together, and you will not move. Sometimes I talk to them as if they weren't as smart as everybody else, because after all, they were solids. For the liquids, I'd rope off a section of the classroom, and I'd say, you have more mobility because your molecules are more spread out, but you will always take the shape of your container. And the gases, of course, because their molecules were spread out, they had all the freedom in the world. If someone left the door open, they could leave. Now, I don't care where you come from, what every 17-year-old wants is freedom. So immediately, the solids would be like, well, that is not fair. And I'd say, well, then you've got to change your state of matter. Or like class mobility, we have to change our state of mind. And for some of us, this is going to be easy. It's going to be about heating, cooling, or pressure. But for others, it's going to be much more difficult. Our journey together is going to be about finding the freedom that you want, but it's always going to be in the language of science. And at the end of the day, you can't forget who you are. So we had great times in my science class. Innovation ran abound. We had fun, we had meaning, and we were rooted in the human condition. So my kids did well on standardized tests. We beat all the records. Everything was great, and I loved my work. Well, one day I went to lunch with one of the brightest kids that I'd ever taught. The kid could figure out cold fusion smart. And we met for lunch. I said, what are you doing with your science? Science is the study of truth, so what's your truth? And he said, I'm working in cleaning services. And you'd be surprised at what people don't know about the basic properties of ammonia. And then he laughed, kind of like you did. And my heart was broken. This kid was brilliant. He was basically telling me that he was cleaning toilets, that he was not even making minimum wage because of his documentation status. And what a waste. But the weirdest thing was that he was cheerful about it. Cheerful. He said, and he said, you know, Sandee, I don't think you're listening to me. You always taught us that leadership is making opportunities for others. So it doesn't matter whether I'm in a lecture hall or a lab, or I'm cleaning toilets, I'm making opportunities for others, just like you made opportunities for us. And Javier took me to school that day. And I knew walking back to my office that my life would never be the same. This was the late 90s. Technology was hot. There were dot-coms everywhere. The world had been declared flat. This was an amazing opportunity to do something powerful. Furthermore, I love technology because it's creative. It shouldn't matter what you look like. And that the systems thinking that's embedded in technology and all the process and methodology could make for a beautiful blueprint for developing community leaders. So what if we married them both? IT, at the end of the day, is about solving problems and building solutions. So what if, yeah, we got folks great jobs in IT as developers, but also they were solving the problems and building the solutions in our own communities. And what if we determined success not by getting out of the hood, but by investing back in? How would that change our communities fundamentally? How could we be geeks, experts, be makers, shift from being consumers to makers, and all the while figure out how to solve the problems that plague our communities? And so that's when we started IC Stars. It's almost 20 years later. A year ago, we came to Milwaukee, as you've heard, and we couldn't be happier. We've been embraced by the business community, and Milwaukee is a very special place to us. Not just because it's close by, and you guys have the best beer, but because here you come together. You innovate, you invest in innovation, and you're all connected. You're invested in connection. And that's a very powerful thing. I think we're very fortunate to be here in Milwaukee with all the companies that are supporting us and all the companies that will support us after my speech. Thanks again for laughing. And so we are on our second cohort. This very day, they are working through a 12-hour day, through a 4-month boot camp, and a 2-year residency. They work on real projects for real clients, and every single day at 4 o'clock, everything stops and we have high tea. There's a different business leader who comes to the table and shares their journey with our cohort. It is an hour every day of reflection, of imagining the future, and of changing perceptions. That's our job. That you might think, okay, Sandee, that'd be really cool to come to tea at IC Stars, and I encourage you to do so. And maybe you will share the top 10 things like Guy did that every person in their 20s should know. But I promise you, what you will learn is that it's more than code, and it's more than innovation. It's about how we are all connected. Oftentimes our tea speakers say, Sandee, they ask better questions than my management team. How do I hire from IC Stars? How do I get my team engaged? And how do I support this organization? And that's what transformation is all about. Sometimes we are transformed by the work that we do. Sometimes we're transformed by the work that is done for us. And sometimes we're transformed in the most unlikely places. It's when we realize that we're all connected. I want to thank you so much for welcoming IC Stars to this amazing community of connection and innovation. And my call to action to you is to get engaged, to stand up, to see stars, and to hire someone who doesn't look like you, who didn't come from your school, but has the resilience, the hunger, and the perseverance to blow your socks off. That's when you see stars. Thank you so much.